Hey, what's up? Welcome to this episode of Rainer on Leadership, a podcast for leadership in any sector, but particularly the church. My name is Josh King.
My name is Sam, and I'm very disappointed in my Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, man, what happened?
Well, they just haven't been playing that well, at least at the time of this recording. But that could change. It's baseball. And, you know.
That's how baseball do.
It's baseball. That's what we say. It's baseball.
Well, at the time of this recording, we are just 10 days away from college football kicking off, and my Texas Longhorns are ranked number one in nearly every poll and ranking, and so pretty excited about that. It's going to be a great season, I think. So,
you know, I don't follow college football, but for your sake, I hope they stay at number one.
Hook 'em horns. All right, so we got a pretty interesting discussion to come up with, but before we do, let's tell them a little bit about Southern Seminary.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the trust gap and why people don't come to your church, and then hopefully offer some solutions. But one of the solutions is Southern Seminary. They've got this ongoing emphasis of church revitalization. They are helping churches through their academic programs get revitalized. And they've got some great stories of revitalization. One of them is Shadowboro Church in Suwanee, Georgia. You can learn more about what happened there at sbts.edu/unified. Again, sbts.edu/unified. There is a link in the show notes as well. Great story where Jared Rumley is the pastor. You definitely need to go check that out, and you need to check out all of their programs that they offer, whether it be a master's, an MDiv, or a Master of Arts, or Doctor of Ministry, or PhD. They have you covered, so go check out Southern Seminary. All right, Josh, we did a research project. By we, I mean Church Answers, not me and you, although you would have done a fine job on it. You just weren't part of the project. And I'll bring you into the next one. It's a big national study, all sorts of findings. You can find this research project in the show notes. There's a link there. We're calling it News Surprising Insights of how the unchurched really feel about the American church. It's free, so go get it if you want it. I would encourage you to go check it out. All sorts of data in there. We're just going to focus on like one or two data points because we really had quite the shocker when we looked at these results. What we found is that the unchurched think that the church is more relevant than regular attenders.
Wow.
Now, I know if you're familiar with the emerging or emergent church movement, and 15, 20 years ago, that term relevant, and everyone was using that. I get the definition. We had to use a term that people knew, so that's the term we used in the research project. So is the church relevant? Well, church people tend to say no, but unchurched people tend to say yes. But then when you talk about trust, like 8 out of 10 church people trust their church, which kind of makes sense if you're going to church. But only 30%, about a third, of the unchurched say the same thing. So there is this crazy dichotomy going on. You've got churched people saying, "I trust the church, but I don't think it's relevant. It's irrelevant. I trust it, but it's irrelevant." And then you have unchurched people saying, "Oh no, the church is still relevant. I just don't know that I can trust the church."
Wow,
it's huge finding that I
but
could not.
It's not really surprising though, given
It was to me
some of the factors we're looking at. Yeah.
Well, what's surprising to me is not the trust factor. You would expect people who go to church to say they trust their church, and you would expect people who don't go to church to say, "I don't know that I do." But that whole relevant side of things, like where the unchurched by great degrees think that the church is more relevant than the actual people in the church is a bit of a shocker. Now that I've shared that, because you weren't part of this project, I want to get your first impression on this. Like, what does that say to you?
Yeah, I am literally hearing this for the very first time. I'm responding in real life. And so first I'll just take on the trust situation. I think you're right. That's not surprising. People within a church they trust the organization they're part of, and then those outside of the church, they just hear the headlines, they hear about scandals, they see like what they think is excessive spending and pastors with excessive lifestyles, and they're like, I don't trust them. As far as though the relevancy, I actually don't find that surprising. Here's why. Here's my theory, and you'll probably have some data, but here's my theory. Inside the church, I do feel like there's a lot of preaching, a lot of Bible study, a lot of things that we have differentiated the secular and the sacred. And so there's these sermons that might make us feel okay, and they may even be like, this is just what I have to do to be a part of this church, but it's not relevant to my life. And I think that's on preachers. We need to be able to explain the text in a way that's relevant on Monday as much as it's relevant on Sunday. And so we haven't done that. And so I think people who are inside churches, in the vast majority of churches, who know what they're getting and saying, yeah, this isn't relevant to my life. On the reverse, though, people who are outside of the church only know what the church promises. They don't know what it's actually delivering. So they look at a church and faith and religion and think, I think that thing would provide some sort of meaning to life, some sort of answers to the greater questions of why am I here, what's my value, what's my purpose. I think that's what they would offer, and I think that's very relevant. And that's what I would probably want if I was to go in there. The problem is that those of us on the inside are going, yeah, we don't answer those questions. We should, and preachers should be delivering that. Teachers should be showing that this is extremely relevant. And yes, scripture from the oldest psalm to Deuteronomy to the Sermon on the Mount answers those deep longings in our hearts, but most preachers just aren't. They're just like, hey, love your neighbor, feel good about yourself. God will christen your desires and your dreams. So I'm actually not that surprised by it. I think it's a matter of we're on the inside and we know it's not. They're on the outside thinking it should. And so the answer would lie somewhere in between.
Man, that's insightful. I don't know that I disagree. Like I think I agree with you. I know I put you on the spot with that because I just dumped all of this in the show notes as we were talking. I'm like, here's what we're talking about, Josh. Here, speak. Tell me what you think. I'll say this: there are a lot of churches that think relevance is their problem, but it's not. It's trust. There's a lot of churches that are trying to be relevant, that are trying to attract the culture, that are doing things that they think will draw people in. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is all that they're doing is drawing in a lot of transfer growth, and they're reaching the churched community. You don't the unchurched largely already think that the church is relevant, regardless of what kind of church you have. The problem is trust. So churches that take the approach of relevance typically don't grow with unchurched people. They grow with churched people. Yeah. If you take the approach of, you know what, we're going to communicate to the community that you can trust us and do things to show that, you are more likely to reach the unchurched.
Yeah, and my mind is spinning here about like, what are ways in which we can corporately and then individually build trust? Obviously, you just need to be trustworthy people. But I think there's a couple of things. The word that keeps coming to my mind as you talk is slick. I think the church largely in America has become obsessed with being just really slick and just very marketed, that almost you just literally cannot tell anymore the difference between this massive Baptist church and this massive Methodist church and this massive quote unquote non-denominational. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10, and you know this, Sam, 9 out of 10 of those big non-denominational churches in your town are Southern Baptist churches. They just hit it. But it's gotten so slick and marketed. We're all buying the same postcards from outreach.com. We're all sending the same stuff, that there's just no differentiation. And there's something inauthentic that speaks to that. When you go to the church's website, and the belief statement could apply to the Mormons as much as it applies to the evangelicals, when there's just no kind of real declaration of who these people are. I'll tell you, one of the compliments that we regularly get, I've gotten it at my previous church and I get it here as well, is one of the things that we were attracted to is your entire faith statement is on your website. We can literally know exactly what you believe on all these things. We don't hide it. We just are currently we're going through a rebranding right now, and we extended the name. So it's Valley Ridge Church, the First Baptist Church of Lewisville, Texas. And some folks have asked me, why don't you just ditch the First Baptist part? And I said, because we're Baptist. We don't hide it. If you go to valleyridge.church right now and look at our belief statement, the first whole paragraph that introduces our belief statement is it's explaining what Baptists are. Because we're in a world where people don't like Baptist. I get it. That's part of the reason with the trust. The largest network of Baptist churches has dismantled trust completely in the public eye, and they refuse to acknowledge it or to pay attention to it. And so we, on the local level, have to deal with that. And so I think that there is this element of owning who we are, clearly articulating it. I'll add one more thing. We say things that don't make any sense to anybody. We say things like, what a blessing. Like, I would love for you to be here. It's such a blessing to be here. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. I enjoy hanging out with you, or I feel like God is encouraging this. We need to really kind of de-church our language in a way that speaks to people, but be not in a way that waters it down and makes it slick, but in a way that makes it clear and easy for people to understand. I just think the fact that we're using words that nobody understands and we're not saying anything, that makes people go, I don't trust what's going on over there because I don't know what you're doing. So that's kind of my 2 cents on building trust, but I'm sure you've got some other better one-on-one ideas.
Man, I think you're on a roll. Coded language, again, tends to work with already churched people. Mm-hmm. So that coded language, along with the effort to quote-unquote be relevant, has drawn in other churched people instead of the unchurched. And that's what we're talking about. You can grow your church with transfer growth. And some churches have done phenomenally well by growing their churches with transfer growth. What we're talking about is actually reaching the unchurched, people who aren't connected. So I'll add that authenticity is a key part of that. Mm-hmm. And speaking to the slickness of, your word, of churches, authentic relationships build trust faster than polished presentations. Yeah. If your people are inviting their friends, it doesn't, I hate to say this because I preach every week. It doesn't matter who's in the pulpit. It really doesn't. I get that there's some big names and that there's big draws to some of these big names in terms of pulpit ministry. But for the 400,000 churches that are in the United States, just this idea that, hey, you're my friend, I'm going to invite you to my church. I know you're dealing with a tough time. I've got a group that might be able to help you at my church. Can we get you connected? That authenticity goes so much further with the unchurched. Because if they're unchurched, they're not tuning into the big names. They don't know who they are. The unchurched community has no clue who these big names are. It's only the churched community that knows that.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say authenticity is, and by authenticity, I mean authentic relationships where you're just inviting people because they got some sort of concern in their life. That's far better for reaching the unchurched than a well-known preacher. The well-known preacher reaches the churched people.
Yeah. Where I'm sitting right now, we are within a 10-minute drive of 3 of literally the biggest names in pulpit ministry. I'm 2 miles right now. My office is 2 miles from the office of another guy that is one of the top 1 or 2 preachers downloaded ever. And then just a little bit further, we've got 2 more of them. Then you want to drive all over the Metroplex, and you're going to hit all kinds of names like that. And we've doubled in the last year and a half People don't care about that sort of stuff. Being authentic and direct and just saying what it is. I'll give you a couple anecdotal stories. One time I was on a church staff, and the pastor was upset about the worship team didn't clear off the stage. Like, they didn't themselves get off the stage by the time that the worship minister's prayer was done for the preacher to get up. And he was just really upset about it. And I remember saying, Johnny, it's not a magic trick. Everybody knows that you got to walk off the stage. Nobody's like looking up from the prayer and going, whoa, where did all those people go? And it's just this obsession with being so clean and so polished. It shouldn't bother you. People know that the person's going to leave. Second story, this Sunday had a young woman. She was going to give the greeting here at our church, and we always have a lay person stand up and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm a part of. She said, are you okay with my kid coming up with me? And I said, sure. She said, I just don't want it to look unprofessional. And I said, I actually do want it to look unprofessional. I love when the greeter gets up there, this person, and they stutter a little bit, or they're obviously nervous. I love that. And then they kind of say their piece and then they go sit down, because nobody in that congregation is going, oh man, they put this fool up there. They're not thinking that. They're thinking, hey, that's a person like me. That's a person just like me that gets nervous about getting in front of other people. And this is a church they feel comfortable standing in front. What it screams is that our church is welcoming. Our church is loving. You don't have to be perfect to be up on our stage. So at the same time, I am a big believer that your best preacher should be your primary preacher, that you should deliver the best exegesis of the word. We should do our best. But yeah, authenticity, a lot of times, it's just we've become so obsessed with the slick and the polished that we're just killing it off in every other direction.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right about all of that. The third thing here is presence in the community. So relevance isn't, just to walk through kind of the points here, relevance is not your problem, trust is. Authentic relationships are more important than polished presentations. And then thirdly, presence in the community beyond Sunday mornings is absolutely critical. So what does that presence look like for your church? If you want to build trust, are you interacting with people on a regular basis outside of your church Monday through Saturday? And that presence will eventually build the trust that you need in the community. Most churches are, under 100. So, this idea that, you've got to be everywhere. We talked about that on with a previous episode with Chad Brooks. The idea that you got to be everywhere is a false idea. No church, even the biggest churches, can't be everywhere. So focus on something and be present there and be that. And Chad, when we talked to him, had a really good idea about, if you're a mid or a small church, a mid-sized or small-sized church, be known for something. Like, oh, you're the church that's always handing out popsicles in the summer at all these events. Like, we love that. Thank you. It better to be known as the popsicle church than not known at all.
Not known at all. Yeah. I mean, so we're in a slightly different setting. Our presence in the community, we have the largest facilities, the largest sanctuary in our 2 North Texas suburbs. Okay, so if you know anything about Texas suburbs, they're massive. And in 2 of the bigger ones connected to Dallas, we have the largest auditorium. So the way that we're very present in our community is the school district and funerals. And so like anytime we've had firefighters who have a funeral service at our place, and they're not even near our town. They just come in because it's such a huge event. And the school district does their concerts here. There's all kinds of stuff like that. That's how we're very present in our community. That's how we leverage our space in that way. But one of the things I did when I got here was I started going to the things. I just went to the mayor's prayer breakfast. I went to the town hall meeting. I went to the community action groups and stuff like that. I would take a picture with me and the mayor, or me and my breakfast or something like that, and saying, just repping First Baptist at the annual whatever. And what that did is that started to catch on to where people were like, hey, we're here. We're a church and we're all out in our community. Anytime I would ever catch wind of anybody in our church doing anything out in the community, it could be small, it could be a kid doing something and they brought their First Baptist Church shirt, they were wearing there. I reshared that. Look at this First Baptist kid out there, making much of Jesus in the community. It starts to snowball. You don't have to necessarily do these big events, but this year I'm excited. Our small groups director, our minister, he's getting us involved in what our community calls Western Days, and it's our little community festival thing. We're going to go down there. I think we're making tie-dye shirts or something like that. So that's I love that stuff, and it feels small. It feels simple, but there are so many things. I promise you. Like one of the keys is if you will just call up the city and say, hey, for the big thing that's happening, the Colorpalooza, the Western Days, whatever, we want to be involved. What can we do? They have a ton of volunteer needs, and they will tell you, like what we're doing for Western Days with the tie-dye shirts. They're providing everything. All they needed was 2 sets of 15 volunteers, and so we're just showing up. We're getting full credit for it. It's like they think Valley Ridge Church is doing this whole thing. Nope, the city's doing it. We're just volunteering at it. And that's been every town I've ever been in. A lot of these churches are like, we don't have the money or the people to do that. I promise you do. You can all wear your shirts and go down there, and they'll give you the stuff and say, we'd like you to clean up these streets, walk around with the brooms. And that's a great service opportunity. So, but there's a lot of ways to get present in the community.
So Eastern Kentucky has Hillbilly Days. Texas has Western Days.
What's the most bizarre one? What were you going to say? What do you got there at Bradenton?
Well, I was just going to say we need to start something in Florida. We should call it Iguana Days.
Oh my gosh, that would scare me. Call it Manatee Day. Yeah.
Yeah. We're in Manatee County.
Everybody loves the manatees.
Josh and I have a running inside joke about iguanas because he's not a fan. We have giant iguanas here in Florida, at least our part of Florida.
Dinosaurs down there in Florida.
They do look like dinosaurs roaming around. Yes.
Sam, what's the most bizarre one of those? Like, every city has its little festivals. What's the most bizarre one?
Bizarre?
Or just odd, or seems weird?
Oh, that's easy. That would be the Key West Festival that I really don't want to talk much about.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they get crazy down there.
They get naked and crazy. Yes. So,
are you really crazy if you're not naked? I mean, at that point, you're still holding on.
If you would stand out if you're clothed. So, yeah.
I've heard of all kinds of them, and they're funny out there. I'd love for our listeners to jump on our social media, and let us know the crazy ones in your town. Conway, Arkansas has Toad Suck Days, and it's just as redneck as it sounds. I've heard of Boll Weevil. I think there's a town in Alabama that does Boll Weevil Days. Yeah, they're out there. The town I grew up in had Black Eyed Pea Jamboree. That was their deal.
If your church is not present at the Black Eyed Pea Jamboree, you're doing it wrong.
What are you even doing? It's a great festival. I've been there myself several times. And Cinco de Mayo. Any town in Texas has a great Cinco de Mayo. Go down there, hang out, get great food, great drinks. Yeah.
So a lot of what we're saying is based on a research project that Church Answers Research did. So you can click on the link in the show notes, get that free download. It's free. It's called New Surprising Insights, How the Unchurched Really Feel About the American Church. Would love for you to get that research project. It's a big project that we did, big national study. So go check it out. I'll conclude just by saying that, your church's public witness matters so much more now because we live in a very skeptical culture. And Ryan Burge and I, one of our researchers at Church Answers, has talked about just the widening distrust gap in the United States. What used to be, the 1970s where people trusted each other a lot more. People trust each other far less now than they did in the past. And that's something that the GSS, the General Social Survey, has shown. They've been asking the same question over and over and over again every year. And every year, people trust each other less in our society. I think that's what's driving the political polarization more than anything else. Are we more politically polarized? Yes, but I think that political polarization is actually a derivative of the decreasing trust that we have of each other in the United States. So we have a very skeptical culture, if not a distrustful culture. So what your church does publicly matters way more than in the past. You mentioned the Southern Baptist Convention and how your words have dismantled public trust just because of all of the scandals that have occurred. I think you're exactly right. I also think that a lot of those large churches that are, look like they're non-denominational churches, but they're actually Southern Baptist churches, they're leaving. They're leaving the Southern Baptist Convention because of these reasons.
Oh,
So
yeah. It's a liability.
your church can make a difference in your community, and you can get past that trust factor, or that distrust factor. You can overcome the trust gap, but it's going to require presence. It's going to require authentic relationships, and it's going to require you just doing something outwardly focused over and over and over again. While people may generally distrust the church, the unchurched may generally distrust the church, if you do what you're supposed to do, they will trust you. And that's the point.
I completely agree. I would just add that, like, if you do get in those conversations about your denomination or about your church's past, maybe you weren't the leader back in the day, don't sugarcoat it, don't sidestep it, own it, and say, that did happen. Yeah, there was sex abuse and people covered it up. Yep, and it's been dealt with. I'm mad about it. I fought about it. Other people have fought about it. Those kind of things. But when you kind of just skirt it under the issue, or sweep it under the rug, people they don't trust that, and they've heard that over and over and over. Like, oh, don't pay attention to this. Just focus on the missionaries. They just lose any sort of trust in it, and that's on us. And so we need to be clear with what we say.
Indeed. Certainly want to thank our sponsor, Smart Church Solutions. I know that you're looking for a better way to manage your church or school facilities, because just about every church is. There is a solution. It is eSpace, the leading facility management software built specifically for churches. So you can schedule events, you can manage work orders, track all your assets. It happens all in one place. This software is phenomenal. You can even do automations with your HVAC, door access. Save time and money with eSpace, this facility management software from Smart Church Solutions. Over 1,250 organizations use it. Your church should use it as well. You can learn more at smartchurchsolutions.com/Rainer. Again, smartchurchsolutions.com/Rainer. There's a link in the show notes as well. We certainly want to thank Smart Church Solutions for all that they do to sponsor our episodes.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, sponsors, for sponsoring. And we would appreciate it if you'd help us grow the show. Let other people know about the conversations. Chime into the conversations on social media. And, hey, you don't even have to talk to us about it. Get a group of your church leaders together and y'all talk about it. And let us know how that conversation goes. We hope you are continuing to build trust in your community. And we trust you. So have a great week.